If you want to understand colon cancer, do not look at your genetics. Look at your glucose. That one shift in perspective changes everything. Because what the research has known for nearly a century, and what almost no patient is ever told, is that colon cancer cells are not random biological accidents. They are metabolic machines, and they run on one fuel. Just one. Glucose, the refined, rapidly absorbed sugar that sits at the center of the modern Western diet. Healthy cells lining your colon burn a variety of fuels. They are flexible, adaptable, efficient. But colon cancer cells have lost that flexibility entirely. They are locked into a single metabolic pathway, consuming glucose at a rate 10 times higher than the healthy tissue surrounding them. That dependency is not a footnote. That is a doorway. And here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. Every single day that you eat without knowing this, every meal, every snack, every bowl of white rice or piece of bread consumed without this awareness, you may be fueling the exact cellular environment that colon cancer requires to survive and spread. That is not designed to frighten you. It is designed to wake you up. Because what comes next in this video is the information that changes what you do at your very next meal. Now let me give you the number that makes this personal, because this is not a distant or abstract threat. Colorectal cancer is currently the #1 cancer killer in Americans under the age of 50. It is the second leading cause of cancer death overall in the United States. And despite that reality, dietary metabolic intervention, meaning a conversation about what you eat and how it directly affects cancer cell survival, is raised in fewer than 4% of oncology appointments. That statistic comes from published surveys of oncologist practice patterns. Fewer than 4%. Your oncologist is not withholding this out of indifference. The system they trained inside was never designed to prevent cancer through food. It was designed to detect cancer, remove it surgically, and suppress it chemically. That is the architecture of modern oncology, and it is a structural failure, not a personal one. The individual physician is doing exactly what their education and institutional protocols require. The problem is the protocol, and here is where the geography becomes undeniable. Rural African populations eating traditional diets built on fermentable fiber, resistant starch, and virtually no refined sugar show colorectal cancer rates that are a fraction of what we see in the United States and Western Europe. That divergence is not explained by genetics. When those same populations migrate to Western countries and adopt Western diets, their colorectal cancer rates climb to match ours within 1 generation. The colon does not change, the fuel does. I have spent years working at the intersection of conventional oncology research and nutritional biochemistry, and I want to be honest with you about why I am here. I have reviewed hundreds of patient cases, people living with colorectal cancer, people in active polyp surveillance, people with a strong family history, where the metabolic and dietary factors were clearly written into the biological picture. The butyrate-depleted colonic environment, the high glucose dietary pattern, the missing fiber substrates. It was there, in black and white, in the data. And in nearly every one of those cases, the treatment notes contained zero mention of dietary intervention. Not a single word about what the patient was eating or how that environment was influencing their cancer's ability to survive. That is why I do this. Not for the views, not because this is a content strategy. Because people are sitting in waiting rooms right now. People exactly like you with biological levers they do not know they have. And someone needs to tell them. So here is exactly what we are going to cover today, and I want you to stay with me for all of it. First, you are going to understand precisely why colon cancer cells cannot survive without glucose and what that means for the food on your plate. Second, you are going to see the peer-reviewed research from 4 independent institutions that proves specific dietary compounds kill and starve colon cancer cells in human clinical settings. Third, you are going to receive a precise, measurement-specific protocol with exact preparation instructions you can begin this week. And fourth, and this may be the most important part, you are going to learn the 4 mistakes that well-intentioned people make that accidentally feed cancer cells instead of starving them. If this channel has ever given you something your doctor didn't, take 3 seconds right now and subscribe. Thousands of people managing exactly what you are managing have made that their first step. Make it yours too. Now let me show you how this actually works inside your body, and I am going to use an analogy that I think will make this permanently clear. Imagine the cells lining your colon as a neighborhood of homes. Every house on the street is connected to the same gas line. The healthy homes burn gas efficiently, cleanly, quietly, and only when the thermostat calls for it. They use what they need and they shut off. But now imagine one house on that street whose furnace has been completely rewired. Not just adjusted, rewired. That furnace runs at full blast, all day, every day, consuming fuel at 10 times the rate of every other home on the block. The neighbors' gas bills stay normal. That one house is draining the line. And here is the critical detail. That rewired furnace cannot burn anything except one specific grade of fuel. Not wood, not propane, not anything else. Only glucose. Change the fuel coming through the line, reduce the supply, or introduce something that clogs the intake valve, and that furnace cannot sustain itself. It starves. It shuts down. This is not a metaphor invented to make a YouTube video more watchable. This is the exact metabolic reality described in the oncology literature as the Warburg effect, named after the German biochemist Otto Warburg, who first documented it in 1924. Cancer cells abandon the normal, efficient method of energy production and lock themselves into a glucose-dependent process called aerobic glycolysis, which simply means they burn sugar rapidly and incompletely, even when oxygen is available. It is an ancient, primitive metabolic program, and it is their fatal weakness. In traditional Japanese coastal populations and in rural communities across sub-Saharan Africa, the dietary pattern looks almost nothing like ours. Fermentable fiber, resistant starch, minimal refined glucose. Those are not coincidental cultural preferences. They are the dietary equivalent of changing the fuel grade in the gas line. The cancer cell's furnace cannot run on what those populations are delivering, and the cancer rates reflect it. Now let me take you one level deeper, because understanding the furnace analogy is the beginning. But what I am about to describe is the mechanism that actually converts your dietary choices into cancer cell death. When the beneficial bacteria living in your colon receive resistant starch and soluble fiber as their food source, they fermentation. That fermentation produces something called butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid, which simply means a small fat molecule produced by bacterial metabolism inside your gut. Butyrate is the primary fuel that healthy colonocytes, that is, the cells lining your colon, use to sustain themselves. It feeds the good cells. It maintains the mucosal lining. It keeps your colon's defensive architecture intact. But here is the contrarian truth that the research has established, and that oncology almost never discusses. The same compound that nourishes healthy colon cells is genuinely toxic to colon cancer cells, not mildly inhibitory, toxic. Butyrate enters a cancer cell and acts as an HDAC inhibitor, meaning it blocks the enzyme called histone deacetylase that cancer cells use to silence the genes responsible for apoptosis. Apoptosis is the cellular self-destruction program, the body's built-in instruction that tells a damaged or mutated cell to shut itself down before it can replicate. Cancer's central survival strategy is to switch that program off. Butyrate switches it back on. When HDAC is inhibited, the silenced apoptosis genes reactivate, and the cancer cell receives the signal it has spent its entire existence suppressing: self-destruct. And this is the part that explains everything your doctor never had time to say. The compound that accomplishes this is not a pharmaceutical. It is not a procedure billed at $3,000 per session. It is produced naturally, continuously, inside the colon of any person eating the right foods. A colon that has been fed refined carbohydrates and processed food for decades is butyrate depleted. It is a terrain where cancer cells face no resistance. A colon consistently fed resistant starch and fermentable fiber is butyrate rich. It is a hostile environment where cancer cells are being instructed to die. Same organ, entirely different chemistry, and you control the inputs. Now let me show you what the independent science actually says, because I would never ask you to change your eating based on mechanism alone. A randomized controlled trial from the University of Colorado Cancer Center enrolled 120 high-risk patients, people who had already developed colorectal adenomas, which are precancerous polyps, and tracked them over 12 months. The group supplementing with resistant starch derived from green banana flour experienced a 45% reduction in recurrent polyp formation compared to the placebo group. 45%. That is not a trend. That is a result. Researchers at the Johns Hopkins Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center conducted laboratory and early clinical work demonstrating that sulforaphane, the active compound produced when cruciferous vegetables are properly prepared, selectively triggered apoptosis in stage 3 and stage 4 human colorectal cancer cell lines. Selectively. The healthy colonocytes adjacent to the cancer cells were unaffected. The cancer cells received the self-destruct signal. The healthy tissue did not. The Imperial College London Global Cancer Analysis Consortium followed 475,000 participants across 10 countries for 15 years. Their finding was precise. Every 10-gram increase in daily dietary fiber intake was associated with a 10% reduction in colorectal cancer risk. The strongest protection came specifically from cereal and legume fiber, the fiber types most efficiently converted to butyrate. And from the German Cancer Research Center, a comparative intervention study found that butyrate-producing dietary protocols reduced inflammatory cytokine markers, that is, the chemical signals of chronic inflammation inside the colonic lining, to levels comparable to low-dose aspirin therapy. Comparable outcomes: 0 gastrointestinal bleeding risk, no prescription required. The same anti-inflammatory protection delivered by a food protocol with documented systemic benefits rather than documented systemic risks. What I am about to give you is the simplest thing in this video, and the one that matters most. Here is the protocol. 4 components, specific measurements, exact preparation guidance, no supplements sold here, no clinic required. Component 1, resistant starch loading. Your target is 20 to 30 grams of resistant starch daily. You reach that through 3 sources combined. 1 cup of white rice cooked, cooled overnight in the refrigerator, and eaten the following day provides approximately 4 grams of resistant starch. The cooling process restructures the starch into a form your digestive enzymes cannot break down, which means it reaches your colon bacteria intact. 1 medium green banana, eaten firm and slightly underripe, provides approximately 12 grams. 2 tablespoons of raw potato starch stirred into cold water or a smoothie provides approximately 16 grams. Do not heat the potato starch above 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Not a little above, not briefly above. The resistant starch structure collapses with heat and converts to rapidly absorbed simple glucose, the exact fuel you are trying to withhold from cancer cells. Cool and raw, that matters. Component 2, sulforaphane activation. 100 grams of raw broccoli sprouts daily, not mature broccoli florets. Mature broccoli contains approximately 50 times less sulforaphane precursor than sprouts. Chop or chew the sprouts thoroughly, and then wait exactly 40 minutes before eating them. That window allows the enzyme myrosinase, which simply means the enzyme that converts the inactive precursor into active sulforaphane, to complete its work. If you prefer cooked broccoli, add half a teaspoon of mustard seed powder to your preparation. Mustard seed provides external myrosinase that survives cooking and restores the conversion that heat would otherwise destroy. Component 3. Targeted prebiotic feeding. 8 grams of partially hydrolyzed guar gum or inulin-type fructans from chicory root taken with your largest meal. These compounds preferentially feed the bifidobacterium and lacnospiraceae bacterial strains, the primary butyrate producers in the human colon. Component 4. Timing. Take your resistant starch and prebiotic components together at dinner. Overnight fermentation during the body's peak cellular repair window maximizes butyrate output precisely when your colon needs it most. Now, before you feel confident that you have everything you need, I want to protect your effort, because the 4 mistakes I am about to describe are exactly where good intentions quietly fail. Mistake 1. Cooking your resistant starch foods before eating them. Warming last night's cooled rice, blending heated banana into a cooked smoothie, or stirring potato starch into hot tea collapses the resistant starch structure and hands cancer cells the glucose you were trying to deny them. This is not a minor reduction in effectiveness. It is a chemical reversal. The food that was starving cancer cells becomes the food that feeds them. Mistake 2. Using mature broccoli florets and eating them immediately after cutting. The sulforaphane precursor is present in mature broccoli, but at a fraction of the concentration found in sprouts, and without the 40-minute enzyme activation window, the precursor remains biologically inert. You are eating broccoli, You are not producing sulforaphane. Mistake 3. Taking probiotic supplements and assuming they will produce butyrate on their own. Think of it this way. Probiotics without prebiotic fiber substrate is like hiring a full construction crew and providing no building materials. The workers arrive. They have nothing to build with. The bacteria reach your colon and find no resistant starch, no fermentable fiber, no substrate to ferment. Butyrate production requires both the bacterial workforce and the raw material. You need both. Mistake 4, and this is the one I see most often across every age group, but particularly in people over 60 who want results quickly. Implementing the protocol for 1 week, seeing no dramatic change, and stopping. Butyrate production in the colon is not an on-off switch. It is a flow-dependent process. The colonic bacterial population requires 3 to 4 weeks of consistent substrate delivery before the butyrate-producing strains establish sufficient dominance to generate clinically meaningful output. 1 week on, 1 week off resets that process every single time. Consistency is not a lifestyle preference here. It is a biochemical requirement. Here is what I want you to hold on to as we close. Right now, inside your colon, there are Lactospiraceae and Roseburia bacteria, the specific species that produce butyrate. They may be depleted, they may be outnumbered, but they are there, and they respond to resistant starch within 48 to 72 hours of consistent feeding. Right now, your colonocytes carry the HDAC enzyme pathways that butyrate inhibits inside cancer cells. Right now, your immune system contains natural killer cells that become measurably more active in a low-inflammatory, butyrate-rich colonic environment. These are not systems you need to build from scratch. They exist inside you at this moment, waiting for the right signal. Without this protocol, your colonic environment continues to drift more glucose, less butyrate, more permissive terrain for cancer cells that know exactly how to exploit it. With consistent implementation over 4 to 8 weeks, that terrain shifts. Measurably, reproducibly. The colonic chemistry your body was designed to maintain becomes the colonic chemistry it actually has. Biological decline is not your body's inevitable direction. It is the direction of a body that has not yet received the right instruction. You have the instruction now. 1 in 23 Americans will receive a colorectal cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. That means someone you love, your spouse, your adult child, your closest friend, is statistically in that group right now. Eating without this knowledge, every single day, sending this video to them is not sharing content. It is an act of protection. Do that now. And if you want to understand how the same butyrate pathway we discussed today also governs chronic inflammation throughout your cardiovascular system, a connection that most cardiologists have never mentioned to their patients, my next video breaks down the gut-heart axis in full. The biology connects, and once you see it, you will understand why both your colon and your heart are waiting for the same dietary shift. I will see you there.